certificate, given the President's announcement last week that we would be receiving funds as a state for the new high-speed rail system. I know many of you know Mayor Hibbert and are familiar with him and his background, but for those of you who are not, let me just read a couple of items from his bio. Mayor Hibbert was first elected to the Clearwater City Council in March of 2002. He was first elected mayor in 2005 and was re-elected in 2008 and will serve a 4-year term. He is a graduate of Florida State University with a bachelor's degree in business and a bachelor's degree in economics, as well as a master's degree in business administration. He has served as the volunteer executive to the United Way of Pinellas County and the board of corporate partners at H. Lee Moffitt Cancer Center, as well as a board member of the Jim Moran Institute of Entrepreneurial Study at Florida State College of Business. Mayor Hibbert is a graduate of the class of 2000, Leadership Pinellas, and the class of 2007, Leadership Florida. He is the chairman of the Pinellas County Metropolitan Planning Organization, member of the Mayor's Council of Pinellas County, and a member of the board of directors of the Florida League of Mayors. Mayor Hibbert is on the board of TBARTA, the Tampa Bay Area Regional Transit Authority. He is a 30-year member of Calvary Baptist Church. Mayor Hibbert is married with 2 children. Will you join me, please, in welcoming Mayor Hibbert? I would also like to add that as the mayor speaks, you may think of some questions that you'd like to ask him. And Jason, perhaps you just take a second and explain to them how they can do that. If you can send questions on this Twitter account, they'll appear on the screen here, and we'll be able to answer those directly.
Good early afternoon. My name is Jason Green. I'm the Sustainability Coordinator at Petersburg College. And we're trying something new today. For those of you that, number 1, have an iPod or a BlackBerry, and number 2, don't really want to stand up and ask your questions to the audience, you have the opportunity to use your BlackBerry or your iPhone to ask questions of the mayor at any time during his presentation, and at the question and answer period, we'll ask him his questions. So if you go to your cell phone, log into Twitter, search for Sustainable SPC, and follow us, and send a message to Sustainable SPC. You can send your questions directly to me. I'll have them. We'll answer them at the end. And if Facebook is your website of choice, search Sustainable SPC, join the group, and write something in the Write Something box and send it, and we'll have it. So please use it. Thanks.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me. There's a couple of things that aren't on my bio. I started out here in 1985 at it used to be St. Petersburg Junior College back then, which is starting to make me feel really old. I'm trying to enter the new age of technology, and it's funny, so I won't feel uncomfortable if I see you all texting out there, because you're probably texting questions, right? I now bring my iPhone to church, and I had some older ladies this past week look at me and think I knew what they were thinking. They were saying the mayor is texting or emailing in church. And I downloaded a version of the Bible, which is really helpful. I don't have to carry anything down. I can put notes and everything else in there. But I know some of them are saying, I can't believe he's emailing in church. So I'm going to assume that all of you are asking questions and just taking notes about all the interesting things I'm going to talk about. I've lived here in Clearwater for 31 years and got into politics after some things, in my opinion, weren't going the right direction in the city of Clearwater, and ran in 2001 for city council and lost that first election, and then ran the next year and was fortunate enough to win, and 3 years later run for mayor. So 2 lessons out of that. First of all, you're getting a really great foundation here at this college, and secondly, truly, if at first you don't succeed, don't give up, because the lessons that you learn from that can be invaluable. I'm not going to be talking as much about Clearwater, which is what I normally talk about. Today I'm really going to be talking about TBARTA. and I am the vice chair of T-BARTA. How many of you know what T-BARTA is? That's still not a very good showing. T-BARTA stands for Tampa Bay Area Regional Transit Authority. And T-BARTA is made up of 7 counties in the Tampa Bay area: Sarasota, Manatee, Pinellas, Pasco, Hernando, Citrus, and Hillsborough County. So 7 counties. We really wanted Polk County to be in that, but they have kind of 1 foot in the Tampa Bay region and 1 foot over in the Orlando region. And so they're still coordinating with us. But T-BARTA is that 7-county region, and we are working to bring mass transit to all of you. So I'm really going to be talking about 3 things: what T-BARTA is, how it's made up, what our plans are, and ultimately how it's going to benefit you. And then what I want to do is open it up to any questions that you might have. How many of you drove here today? How many of you use mass transit, meaning a bus? Because that's right now all we have. Okay. So I'd say probably maybe 5% or less used mass transit. And in many cases, that's because it's not really convenient, because we don't have a cohesive system yet that really works. T-BARTA was started 2.5 years ago by the Florida legislature, and it is made up of 9 elected officials and 4 gubernatorial appointees. And so you have the mayor of St. Petersburg, the mayor of Tampa, myself, several county commissioners that are on that board, a county commissioner from every county in the 7 area region, and 4 gubernatorial appointees. And what we're really trying to do is bring mass transit to Tampa Bay. And what that means is we're going to have a more robust bus system, but we're also going to be incorporating rail. And the rail we kind of look at, just to give you a word picture, as a spine and rib system. The spine is going to be the rail system, which really is going to start in Hillsborough County, because they are going to referendum in November of this year to ask all of their taxpayers if they want to tax themselves to bring rail to Hillsborough County. The tax would be an additional 1-cent sales tax. And that money would go towards rail, would go towards improving the road system, improving the bus system, and also for trails. Those are really the 4 components over in Hillsborough County. And the voters will either say yes or no. Our responsibility as T-BARTA is to put together the best plan possible. The spine, which is that rail, is so important because what we want to do is create the ribs, which is the bus system, that you might take a mile or 2 to get onto the spine, which is that rail system. So a lot of you probably would not be willing to take an hour and a half to make it from here down to St. Petersburg, which may, in many instances, that's how long it might take to get to your final destination. But you'd be very willing to take a bus a mile or 2 to get on rail that would then get you to St. Petersburg in 15-20 minutes, and then take another bus a couple blocks to get to your final destination. So what happens is, it's very much like our bodies. Getting all this connective tissue makes us work better. And that's really what the high-speed rail is going to do as well. A lot of you have heard that the president came last week and gave us more or less a down payment on high-speed rail in Florida. The first segment would be from downtown Tampa to Orlando, with 5 stops. A stop at Orlando International, at their convention center, Disney, 1 in Lakeland, and 1 in Tampa. A lot of people ask, well, why not more stops? Well, if you have too many stops, then it's no longer high speed. Those trains have to get up to 200 miles per hour, and if you have too many stops, all you're doing is starting and stopping. So that is almost a super spine system. And the key for us is to be able to tie our T-BARTA system into the high-speed rail. Those trains will only be running once an hour. That's called headway. Headway is one of these wonderful transportation terms that you learn all this stuff. and acronyms. And in 2 years, when I'm out of office, all of it will be worthless knowledge. But until then, it's up there somewhere. But headways are very important. You want to be able to know that a bus or a train is going to come every 10 minutes and you can count on it. I was in Japan this last fall. Their train system is so robust and amazing. First of all, it is within seconds of when they tell you that the train is going to arrive. And buddy, if you aren't on it, it's leaving without you. They even have people in the Tokyo station called pushers. And they literally push you onto the train and pack people on. Now, how is all this going to work? One of the big things that people talk about with the rail is it is extremely expensive. And it is. The range is anywhere between $30 and $70 million per mile. And that sounds like an overwhelming number. One of the things that I tell people, and many of you probably have had the opportunity to buy a house, and the rest of you will have that opportunity in the future, but you don't buy your house in 1 year. You buy your house over a 30-year period. Why? Because you couldn't afford it if you had to pay for it all in 1 year. That is very similar to mass transit. We are going to be paying for this over a 50-year period. So that's one thing. Second thing people don't remember or think about is that roads are not free. All of you have been driving around here. You've seen the new overpasses that are on US 19, and we're about to start new overpasses from State Road 60 all the way down to Whitney Road to make that a limited access highway. Those overpasses are about $65 million per overpass. That is not free, and after we build them, we have to maintain them. So to me, the reason that I support mass transit is, first of all, I want an alternative for all of us to our automobile. We all remember when gas was $4, $4.25, just a year and a half ago. I assure you, it will be there again. It may take 2 years, it may take 5, but we will be at that price and probably higher over time. And so to have an alternative to your automobile is critical. The other important thing with mass transit is we need to be competitive in creating and attracting jobs to this region. All of you are going to graduate in the not too distant future, and you want to get a good job. If you want to get a good job and you want to stay here, you have to have companies that are hiring. And when companies are looking at regions, they are looking for mass transit. We are one of only 2 of the top 25 regions in this country that don't have mass transportation. The other is Detroit. And where it's been instituted, it's been a huge success. Charlotte recently, Denver, Salt Lake City, Phoenix are 4 of the newest systems. And we recently had the mayor of Charlotte here. He was talking about the fact that when he's talking to a company that is interested in coming to Charlotte and maybe looking at the Tampa Bay region, one of the things that he points out is that they have mass transit and we do not. The other thing is we have a very large senior population, and as they get older, they need alternatives as well for transportation so that they continue to be independent. The other factor you need to be thinking about is we as Floridians have been paying for mass transit for years. We have been paying for mass transit for years. The problem is we've been paying for mass transit in Atlanta and Chicago and Charlotte and Denver and Dallas, Phoenix and LA because as a state, we are a donor state. Only 87 cents of our federal tax dollars for transportation comes back. So that other 13 cents is going elsewhere. It's going to all those cities that I mentioned. So you're already paying for mass transit. Now, one of the key things is we're going to have to help pay for this. The federal government is very much like God. And God helps those who help themselves. And so you need to have some local contribution. For the high-speed rail, the contribution by the state of Florida is all of the right-of-way that exists already in the I-4 corridor, to the tune of about $2.5 billion. For us, we're going to have to come up with a funding source, which will probably be some type of sales tax in Pinellas County, and I would anticipate that you'll be seeing that in another 2 years, depending on how things go in Hillsborough. We're very hopeful that we can eventually hook up with them and have a true regional system so that you could go to downtown Tampa, or you could go to USF if you want to continue your studies there for graduate school, or you want to go over to a game at Ray J, or you want to go to the St. Pete Times Forum or down to the Trop. All of those are very important. So you're going to continue to see T-BARTA. Now I've got a whole new huge group that when I go to talk to people and I ask them if they know what T-BARTA is, you'll all be raising your hands because you know what it is. When I first started talking to people, you might get one hand or no hands at all. Slowly that is increasing. I think what you need to keep in mind, what's in it for all of you, is it's going to make our region more competitive. It's going to give you all an alternative to your automobile. We're hoping that families can reduce the need for 2 automobiles, 3, and get down to 1. That would be a great help to our transportation system, our road network, and also help the environment significantly. So with that, what I'd rather do than just continue to drone on is to open it up so all of you can ask questions. Are we going high tech, or do I take hands?
Hands.
This young lady was first.
And you're starting off with the high-speed rail. But here in Clearwater, you've spoken on the buses not being able to connect, and all of this, all of these issues we have with the buses. Why are we starting in Orlando with the high-speed rail and not here at home with just the bus system?
It's a good question. For the start of it, if you didn't hear, the question is, why are we starting out in Orlando with a high-speed rail rather than here in Pinellas and Hillsborough County? The High-Speed Rail Committee started out years ago, and if all of you remember, we had a statewide referendum to support high-speed rail, and that passed. One of the things that they did wrong was they did not put all the price tags on what that would cost. And then another referendum came through, and as a state, we defeated high-speed rail. None of that federal money was in place to lower the price tag for us as citizens, and that's what's changed. The stimulus money has changed the whole dynamic so that the high-speed rail can come to fruition. We really are 2 independent agencies and 2 independent programs. T-BARTA and the Tampa Bay region needs to go forward with mass transit, regardless of whether the high-speed rail came to fruition or not. We need to solve our regional transportation. What our hope is to have the T-BARTA system that will connect into the high-speed rail so that people that are staying at Disney for 4 or 5 days and decide that they want to go to a beach, which is one of our greatest assets, can get on that high-speed rail, come to Tampa and transfer from Tampa and come to Pinellas and use our beaches. Tourism is still always either number 1 or number 2 as far as industries in this state. So they really are independent issues. We can't get that $1.25 billion for the T-BARTA plan, but we will be able to go for FTA funding, which is Federal Transit Authority money. And we are hoping that they will pay for up to half of whatever we create. But as I said, we need to come up with the other half, either locally or through state funding.
Sir, on that same topic, most of the traffic that comes on I-4 is either coming towards Tampa or towards Orlando. And how are you going to justify the amount of the tourists coming and going for spending, what'd you say, 65 million per mile?
The Orlando segment is the high speed. That doesn't have anything to do with the T-BARTA plan.
No, sir, that's not what I meant.
Ultimately, we're going to put together a plan, and we're going to bring it to all of you as citizens and as voters. And you're either going to decide that over a 50-year period, this is worth doing, or it's not. So ultimately, the ball is going to be in your court. What I want to do when I talk about roads being $65 million for these overpasses, I think it needs to be put into perspective how much our road system costs. If you go in the interchange on the Lynx project, which is over by the airport, that's almost $750 million to do that interchange over at TIA. Okay? So it's a huge improvement, but understand the magnitude of the numbers. The rail can cost normally anywhere between 40 and 65 per lineal mile. But once it's in, the maintenance and everything else is relatively minimal. Now there's operating costs. There are also other benefits that we're looking at, especially in Pinellas County, because we have what's called a CSX corridor. There's already a rail line that only has 2 trains a day that goes directly from downtown Clearwater to downtown St. Pete. The only thing that does is deliver newsprint for the St. Pete Times. And that corridor already exists, and we can put commuter rail on that as soon as we get an agreement and a funding source for the trains. And you could be traveling from downtown Clearwater to downtown St. Petersburg in 20 minutes. And you would know how long it's going to take, no matter the weather, the traffic, or anything else. To me, that's an enormous benefit. And if we get the right agreement with CSX, that could be a much lower cost because you're not buying right away. You're using right away that already exists. And that's a great opportunity for us. I'll come back to you.
2 questions. First one's real quick. Will it be Hillsborough County only that will be having the 1% sales tax increase? And how do you think you're going to get the average Floridian? Like myself, I've never used mass transit. You know, we're so car-oriented.
Who's this guy?
How have other metropolitan areas done in that respect?
That's a great question. The Hillsborough, the referendum, each county will have their own referendum. And they're not going to be simultaneous, they're going to be sequenced. And it really is dependent upon how far the plans are of each county. T-BARTA is the umbrella organization, but each county has autonomy. So Hillsborough is going in November to their citizens to ask for a penny. Pinellas probably will go either in 2011 or 2012, and that will be a separate penny. It's roughly $143 a household is what it comes out to. And that sounds like a big number, and I understand in these economic times it's crazy to even be talking about any new tax. But what if you could get rid of a second car? What if you aren't spending as much time on the road wasting gas? You've got to look at the benefits as well, plus the job creation. The other thing that people have complained about in Florida is urban sprawl. This will start to limit that because you'll have development that doesn't encourage urban sprawl. And everywhere where the rail has been initiated in the last decade and a half, the ridership has far exceeded what was anticipated. Phoenix is almost double what was anticipated. It only opened 2 years ago. And a lot of the people that they're getting are what are called choice riders, people who have a choice. They don't have to ride mass transit, but they've decided they'd rather sit and read a newspaper and not get road rage because that person won't get out of the left lane, and actually spend less in the long run. And so they've adopted it. I'm going to let you pick the people, because then I don't feel bad.
I have a couple questions. How much would the average ticket for a trip or a monthly yearly pass cost? And how long till operational, and what would the security be?
Several questions. Okay. The passes right now for PSTA and HARP run between about $1.60 and $2. Those rates would stay the same. There would also be opportunities for daily, monthly, and annual passes. Obviously, when you buy one of those passes, you get discounts on the ridership. If you extrapolate and look at what it costs to drive an automobile between gas, maintenance, insurance, and parking, it's a substantial savings. I mean, it's an enormous savings. But you have to put all that together. The security, most of the places that we've looked at, and we've taken tours, we went last year to Charlotte, Denver, and Dallas. They're using transit police at many of the stops, but they're also using a lot of cameras, which has been very effective, and have not had any issues in those three cities as far as safety. What was the third question?
Actually, I have four. How long till operational, and what type of rail system would it be? Like maglev or possibly diesel?
Operational. When you start dealing with rail, you are talking very long time frames. So I think we need to set expectations. If a referendum was passed tomorrow, the first rail that you might be able to ride is 5 to 6 years away. So it is a long time frame. Our overall T-BARTA plan is 50 years. Our midterm plan is 35 years. So this is something you're doing for yourselves, your children, and grandchildren. But, we have to get the first pickle out of the jar, otherwise we can't go forward. So, and then maglev, the technologies have not been determined. It would not be maglev for our area, it would be more light rail. Light rail is more appropriate for shorter distances.
I've been able to go to Canada, and they have one of the top 3 bus systems in the world. How often would buses run? And if they did run, would they run all night and all day, or only for certain parts of the day?
The bus system would be made more robust than it currently is, but the bus also would not be doing as many long legs. Right now, you can go all the way from Tarpon Springs down to St. Pete. The idea is not to do that in the long run. The buses would be reserved for shorter runs to get you again to the spine. Okay? We are also looking at what's called BRT, which is bus rapid transit. Those buses stop less frequently. You pay for the bus before you get on it. And in some instances, it has dedicated lanes. We're looking at that right now for downtown Clearwater Beach to alleviate a lot of our traffic and parking problems. Okay. But I've got a mic back here.
Mr. Mayor, going back to that First Lady's question, thank you, sir. That's fine in terms of the future and the long term, but we have many thousands of people that rely on the bus every day, day in and day out. Is there any short-term, meaning the next 12 to 24 months, to improve the speed of point A to point B throughout the Pinellas County area?
I'm not on the PSTA board, but I do know a lot of the PSTA plans. What PSTA did recently is they really did a study of what routes are being used the most. Understand, they have a budget, just like any of us do. Cities, companies, and individuals, we all have budgets. And so they've got this pot of money, and they've been trying to determine how they can best use that pot of money. So recently, they eliminated a bunch of bus routes that might have 1 or 2 riders per day, and are focusing on routes that have many riders. And what they are trying to do is increase what? The only term you learned? Headways. The headways, which is how frequent the buses come. So instead, for instance, of coming every 20 minutes, they're coming every 10 minutes. And so they are trying to make those high-demand corridors more robust and have shorter headways. And that's how they're utilizing their money.
I'd like to premise this by saying, isn't it true that because of the way development has progressed in the last 50 years, massive transportation was ignored? Now, why isn't it not that we just cost shift this money to a mill increase on people's property, especially wealthy people's property first? And then second, why don't we use this money to work 24/7 and put a lot of people to work?
Good questions. There's no doubt that Florida was planned on the cheap. We did not plan Florida to take advantage of mass transit. One of the advantages is that development patterns will change. We saw that in areas that are very similar to the Tampa Bay region. If you go to Dallas, they are the poster child for urban sprawl. But where the rail lines have been created, what happens is there's greater development around those rail lines. That has a huge economic benefit. In fact, Dallas was showing that wherever $1 was spent in public monies for mass transit, $5 to $6 was being spent by the private sector. If you went to Denver, they had condominiums that were 20 minutes outside of Denver, and the name of the condos were the light rail condos. And the reason that they were living there is they knew that they would be in downtown Denver in 20 minutes whenever they wanted to go. As far as the taxation of it, the reason that you'll probably see it be a sales tax is, first of all, you're still talking to a bunch of elected officials, and a millage increase is equivalent to selling herpes. Okay? You just can't do it. I hate to put that picture in your head, but that's about it. Now, the sales tax, the other reason that many people like it is the fact that many of our tourists are paying 30 to 40% of that. And that's the reason that the sales tax is more interesting.
I have a couple questions, but I'm confident that you can give me some quick, concise answers. And the first one I'm going to be referencing Hillsborough County specifically, but you're pretty familiar with the whole plan, right?
I am.
Okay. My first question is, I'm curious about how this will affect the urban core, because I look at the supporting network and the feeder lines, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I'm not sure there are enough in the areas that need it most. East Tampa, Sulphur Springs, so I'm curious what kind of consideration was taken when they were planning those routes. My second question is going to be about jobs. I read that the T-Barta line will create an average of 1,200 construction jobs every year, but I'm wondering where those will come from. Say, for instance, for the segments built in Hillsborough County, will those jobs be given to people who live in Hillsborough County? And my third question, sorry, I'm kind of piling them on here, but I'm curious if T-Barta will be involved in, I guess, what will be the Yes on Penny sales tax campaign that we'll be seeing soon in Hillsborough, because you guys do have a lot of good information that I think needs to get out there.
I'll start from the back. T-Barta will be involved in that, but it will primarily be a Hillsborough initiative. We will certainly be lending our support on that referendum, because we've been a part of it throughout. They'll also be the business community. And we can only educate. We can't advocate with any of our money. So, but you'll see probably my mug out there, trying to convince people that this is a long-term decision. As far as the jobs, it's going to go to contractors, as it always does, on a local basis. We are hoping that we can attract one of the vehicle companies that would be supplying the vehicles to open a factory in this region. Because Orlando has passed their Sunrail, we hope that we have a plan here in the Tampa area as well, in the high speed. So that has occurred elsewhere, where new large rail projects have started. You start to see all of those other auxiliary businesses that start from that. As far as the routes over in Hillsborough County and how they were selected, all of the routes are always selected on a number of criteria through what's called alternatives analysis. And right now we're looking at Pinellas County, and what I say is, if you looked at the map at T-Barta, you'll see corridors, but what it really ought to be is a swath. A swath that runs 2 or 3 miles, and where that actual corridor will be determined by the study. And the factors that go into that is how close are people living to that area. You want to have reasonable density. You already want to see traffic patterns, so people are going to say, instead of sitting here on the bay, for instance, I'm going to get on that because it just passed me at 45 miles per hour and I'm sitting in the traffic. So you have to kind of put the rail where there's already demand, and then spurs will be added with time. But what you want to make sure of is that your first segment is successful. And so it's going to be where people are already driving, from New Tampa and USF down to downtown and the West Shore, and eventually across the bridges.
Hi.
Yes.
Since the immediate people that are going to be benefiting for this mass trans will be the tourists, have you considered adding a tax or charging or making the tourism industry contribute to this?
I know that Disney is already interested in paying and building their whole station for the high-speed rail. I would not say, I think tourists definitely benefit from the high-speed rail. For the local rail projects, tourists are not the direct beneficiary. It's really the residents. And even the residents who don't take it are going to benefit because there's going to be less people on the road competing for that limited resource. I think the thing we have to keep in mind as residents is it's going to help with our business environment, it's going to give us an alternative, and it's going to alleviate some of our vehicular traffic issues. So those are the things you really have to keep your eye on the T-Barta plan. The other thing, it goes back to sales tax, is tourists are going to be, they pay a lot in sales tax. And so in essence, they will be helping pay for our mass transit system. Who's got the mic? Just, if you'd stand up, that would help me. Let's not do no offense. But a second bite of the apple I normally don't allow until we've answered everybody else's.
She's already asked a question too. Is there a new question?
There's a couple over here.
Good afternoon. What measures, if any, have been taken to protect Florida's habitat or wildlife along the proposed roads?
Y'all hear that? It's an environmental question, which is a great one. This is interesting because mass transit, especially the T-Barta plan, when we first started, a lot of the people who were very concerned about the environmental issues have gotten on board with us. Here's the reason. First of all of the plans have to have environmental studies that go along with it. If there are any negative environmental impacts, they have to be mitigated. And secondly, what it does is it starts to eliminate a lot of this urban sprawl. So you're going to see a little bit more density in the area than you used to around the transit corridors only. But rather than going out and people, it is, a lot of people are moving back to cities. As long as the cities are vibrant, they have to have retail and restaurants and entertainment and reasonable living, but you see this movement back to urban centers. You know why? Because it's a great lifestyle. Now, it's not for everybody. Some people still want 5 acres, and that's fine. But the more attractive you make it, the better it is, because you have mass transit. You can divorce yourself from your car, at least some of the time. It has less impact on our environment, not only from an energy standpoint, but also overuse of our lands.
I know you said the rails already in existence. CSX has it between St. Pete and Cleveland. How are negotiations going with CSX as far as getting that running? Because I heard that they were asking for a bit of too much of that.
Well, they're a private company, and they're always going to ask for money. Okay? And they're also protected by the federal government to an extent. That's the real difficulty, is that the railroads have special protections. That being said, they have a resource that is underutilized, greatly underutilized. When you're only running 2 trains a day, that's not good utilization. So they're not making much money off of that. Pinellas County, for that reason, is very attractive to them. And that line runs all the way from downtown St. Petersburg through Clearwater, up through Safety Harbor, Oldsmar, across Linebaugh, and down to the airport. So it's really low-hanging fruit that we're looking at taking advantage of, and I think we can strike a deal. We went a long way this past special legislative session where some of the liability issues were taken care of. Not to everyone's satisfaction, I might add. It's not a perfect deal, but it is a better deal, and it had to occur for us to go forward.
Basically, by utilizing the rails we already have through CSX, you're basically stating that we're going to have to go to the diesel train system, or we're going to have to retrofit all of CSX trains, so don't they stand to make out anyways?
Well, the CSX corridor in many instances is between 70 and 90 feet. The big thing is, let's say I wanted to add a new road in Pinellas County. How would you do that? You almost can't. Or you'd be going through residential areas and buying each single parcel. Okay? It would almost be impossible. You could do it through eminent domain. You wouldn't want to, nor would you want to pay the price. With CSX, we could do one of 2 things. We could either run on their existing lines, and you could do a combination of freight and commuter. Now, I will tell you, their lines have to be improved because they are not in the condition that's required for passenger rail. Or you can have lines adjacent to their existing line, which is probably the alternative that we would pursue. But the key is that land is already consolidated. It really goes from the places that we want to move people to and from. The other thing is, that used to be an industrial corridor. It is very underutilized. There isn't that much industry in Pinellas County anymore. And so it offers an opportunity for new housing, new commercial development, and other things that will hopefully bring in jobs and improve our economy locally. Hope that answers your question. Anybody else? Is this someone new? Yeah, okay.
I just had a question. If the voters do not go for this referendum, I know people are a little leery of new taxes right now, is there a backup plan?
Well, the backup plan would be refining whatever people don't like, and probably going for it at a different time. There have been referendums in Seattle and Salt Lake City that failed the first time and then came back 2-3 years later and succeeded. The plan did not change very much. What changed was the attitude of voters. Our hope is is first of all to put together a very clear plan of where the quarters would be, how much it's going to cost to build, how much it's going to cost to operate, and how it benefits us.
How much does gas cost per minute? Not that they're voting on this. How bad is parking now?
There's a lot of variables, but all you can do is educate people, and then ultimately they make a decision. That is the plan. I mean, we're not going to alter the best quarters are the best quarters, so you can't change those. I mean, they come out to be the best quarters. You're not going to change that. I think we can do one more. If anybody has further questions, I'll stick around for about 15 minutes to answer them.
We have one Facebook question.
Sweet technology.
Will the high-speed rail be able to accommodate cars, or is it exclusively for passengers?
The high-speed rail is exclusively for passengers. Those trains are extremely quick. The whole idea is that you're literally at a station for 2 minutes, and then the train moves on, and you're moving from Orlando to Tampa in 45 minutes. That's the difference. Any other technology questions? All right, I'll be here. I'll stick around for 10, 15 minutes if you have questions. Thank you all for coming.